Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Tabitha, and today I want to share my birth story, what happened before I went into labor, during labor, and right after. So it's funny, when I was pregnant, I would always say, I don't want to go into labor on my birthday. And everyone would say, oh, that's rude. You don't want to share your birthday with your baby. And I would say, no, no, it's not that. I don't want to be in the hospital on my birthday. I try to avoid hospitals at all costs, and I do not like hospitals. So, on my actual birthday, November 10th, I was out with Landon, my boyfriend. So we were out doing things all day, running errands, and I noticed I was pretty emotional that day. And my due date that I was given was November 18th. And on my birthday, I was 38 weeks and 6 days exactly. So I noticed that day I was pretty emotional. We went out to dinner with family and we went to a nice Italian restaurant, had dinner, nice conversation. Everything was completely fine. And when we were driving home, my back was in so much pain. I was very sore and I didn't know why. So, passed it off to just being pregnant. We got home and I was exhausted. Of course, being pregnant, I was really exhausted and tired my entire pregnancy, but laid in bed, fell asleep. I had a great birthday and I was 24, so good time. So I was laying in bed, sleeping, and typically being pregnant, I would wake up a few times overnight and go to the bathroom. So I woke up per usual at around 11:30 p.m. I woke up and it was still November 10th, my birthday. So I woke up, got up out of bed, and as soon as I got up out of bed, I felt something come out of me. And so I ran to the bathroom, got into the bathroom, and I realized, oh, my water just broke. So I started screaming, Landon, 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 my boyfriend's name, and had him come into the bathroom. And I said, I think my water just broke. And obviously, I'd never experienced this before. And during my whole pregnancy, I was really paranoid about how I would know when my water would break and etc. So Landon said, I don't think so, but I decided to call the midwife anyway. During my pregnancy, I didn't see doctors, I only saw midwives. So I called my midwife and I explained what was going on. And she said, are you having contractions? And I said, no, nothing's going on. So she said, okay, I want you to labor and wait at home until about 6 in the morning and then give us a call back with an update. Typically, first time moms have a really long labor, around 12 hours. So I said, okay, that's fine. I understood. And I went and texted my family and friends, sent everyone messages, and said, hey, I think my water just broke. The baby's going to be coming soon because I know after your water breaks, you have to have the baby within 24 hours after the water breaks. So I sent messages to all of my friends and family, and no one replied. Not one family member, not one friend. Everyone was asleep. So I called my mom a few times, and really, my mom was supposed to be there during my entire labor. So finally, my mom answered after calling her, and I said, come over. So my mom came over, and I was laying in bed, but still nothing was happening. I wasn't having contractions. I was just laying there. Landon went back to sleep. And my mom got to the house and my mom said, you don't seem like you're in labor. You seem fine. And I said, yeah, I feel fine. And this was about 1 in the morning when this was going on. So I said to my mom, you know what, just head on home and maybe tomorrow morning I will call you, give you an update if there's stuff going on. So my mom left, went back to her house, and as soon as my mom left, the contractions started. And at first, they kind of felt like really, really severe menstrual cramps. And I just kept feeling like I was getting cramps. And then finally, everything started progressing and they got worse and worse. And I remember I had a heating pad and I'd placed it on my lower stomach and it didn't help. I was still in a lot of pain. So then I started timing them on my phone with a contraction timer app. And I was looking at that, making sure I was checking how often I was having contractions, and I couldn't remember how many minutes between each contraction you were supposed to go to the hospital. I was super overwhelmed. Landon was asleep. I didn't want to wake him up because I knew we were going to have a really long day the next day when the baby was born. So I was laying in bed, wasn't comfortable because the contractions were just picking up in speed and they were becoming worse and more painful. So finally, I decided to head into the living room and I was laying on the floor and I was trying to watch TV, distract myself, but I couldn't. I was trying to breathe slowly, inhaling and exhaling. And then at that time, I realized I think it may be time to go to the hospital. So I called my midwife again. I said, "Hey, I'm coming to the hospital. I'm in a lot of pain and I think that I am in labor." So she said, "Okay, that's fine." So I was running around the house as best as possible, trying to make sure we had everything in the hospital bag. And we did have everything ready for the hospital bag, but our last minute stuff like toothbrush, toothpaste, I had to pack those things up. And then I woke up Landon and I said, "It's time to go. I'm having really serious contractions." And Landon was like, "Really? Right now?" And I said, "Yes, right now. Let's go." So he really took his time in this moment and kind of lackadaisically walked around the house. And I said, "No, we need to leave." So we got in the car and he asked if I was going to drive. And I said, "No, you're going to drive." And we got in the car, we had everything ready. And I remember every bump we went over, the contractions got terrible. And at this time, my contractions were happening every 2 minutes and they were lasting about 30 seconds. So we finally got to the hospital and the woman said, "Oh, how can I help?" And I said, "I'm in labor." And at that time, I was unable to speak. I was in so much pain. I was just trying to gesture. So they started asking how many weeks I was. And at that time, because it was 3 in the morning, I was 39 weeks exactly. So I said, "I'm 39 weeks and the contractions are really severe." So then they called for a labor and delivery nurse to come and get us. So she brought the wheelchair out and I was having contractions and contractions and they were getting so bad. I remember trying to get up and going to the bathroom and I wasn't able to walk. I had to swing one leg over the other because I was just in so much pain. Finally, after what felt like forever of waiting, the nurse from labor and delivery arrived and pushed me in the wheelchair over to the labor and delivery area. So she pushed me in the wheelchair and we finally got over there and they started asking me a bunch of questions and I couldn't even talk at that time. So I asked Landon to answer all the questions for me regarding how many weeks I was, if I was dilated or not, if the contractions were happening, how far apart they were, etc. So finally, I go with the nurse into the bathroom and I had to change my clothes and they did a urine exam. And the contractions were so bad at that point, it was really hard for me to change my outfit. So then I laid in bed and a nurse came up and said they're going to check to see if my water broke or not. So then they take out a testing kit and they put it inside of you to check if your water broke. And they leave it inside for a couple minutes and they check. At the same time, my midwife, Karen, she came up and she said, "Okay, I'm going to check to see if you're dilated or not." And I said, "Okay, that was fine." So then she goes and checks and her face turned white. And she said, "Oh, you're 5 centimeters dilated." So she said, "This baby is ready to go." And I said, "Yes." And it's crazy because it had only been 3 hours since I had first called my midwife. So I was officially admitted. And then I had to go into the actual labor and delivery birthing room. So I said, "Okay, let's do it." And at that time, I had to call my dad because he had to come to our house and pick up our dog. So I called my dad and he answered and he was obviously very confused. And Landon went ahead and said, "We're at the hospital and the baby's going to be here soon." So my dad said, "Okay, no problem. I'm going to go to your house in a few hours and pick up the dog." So I said, "Okay, great." So I got in the wheelchair again and they had to push me over to the actual delivery room. So we got into the delivery room and Landon suspected that the baby wasn't coming anytime super soon. So he wanted to go ahead and take a nap on the couch in the delivery room. So I immediately asked for the epidural to be administered now. And they said, unfortunately, the doctor who's on call for the epidural, he prefers to have blood tests before he gives the epidural. And I said, "Okay, just please hurry up." So they went ahead and they did blood work and they had to send it over to the lab. So my midwife came in, her name's Karen, And I said, I really want the epidural. And she said, that's fine. We just did your blood work. We just have to wait for the results. And as soon as you get approved for the epidural, we'll go ahead and give you one. So I said, okay. And the contractions were very, very severe. And I was trying everything. I asked if I could get into the shower. I was told no because I was about to get the epidural. So I was really just trying to breathe through all the contractions. My eyes were closed the entire time I was in labor. I remember one thing that was really helping me the most was I was actually counting. Each time I had a contraction, I would count 10, 9, 8, 7, all the way to 0 because I knew that my contractions were lasting about 10 seconds and that's how much I had to go through until they were done. And Karen is such a beautiful soul. She recommended for me to get on the yoga ball. So I got down on the yoga ball and I was moving around with each contraction. And Karen was behind me rubbing on my back. And she was massaging my scalp and playing with my hair and telling me everything was going to be all right, encouraging me to keep breathing. And I was just following her directions. And like I said, Landon was sleeping. He had no idea any of this was going on. When I'm in pain, I get severely quiet. I don't scream or yell or act frantic. I'm just very calm and very quiet. So I was just sitting there going through all this pain in complete silence. So finally they came in and they said, ready for the epidural. They made Landon get out of the room, and Landon was so confused. He had no idea any of this was going on. He thought it was going to be a long time before the baby got here. So he left the room and they set everything up for the epidural. And during the epidural, you have to sit completely still. You are unable to move. So at the same time, I was having contractions and I really didn't feel like I was able to not move while getting the epidural. So I had to sit with my legs crossed. And Karen, my midwife, was holding my head. She was rubbing my scalp. And the anesthesiologist was behind me asking me for verbal agreements. And I just kind of was saying, hurry up, give it to me as soon as you can. And I just wanted the epidural. That's all I could focus on. So as soon as they gave it to me, minutes later, I was instantly relieved. I finally felt like I could breathe. And the pain was so bad, I thought I was actually going to die. So finally, I felt so much better. Landon came back in the room. I looked completely different, and he also didn't realize any of this was going on. So I felt so much better. I was laying in the hospital bed, completely relaxed, and I felt so ready and excited to deliver the baby. But at the same time, I wanted to get a little bit of sleep because I hadn't slept this entire time. So Karen, my midwife, she said, do you mind I check one more time to see how much you're dilated now? And I said, okay, sure, no problem. So she checked and she turned white again. And she said, you're 9.5 centimeters. She said, I cannot believe how fast you are progressing. You could have gone natural the entire way. You were so close. You didn't even have to get the epidural because you're actually not supposed to get the epidural when you're 9.5 centimeters. So she was very impressed that I made it all the way to 9.5 without the epidural. So Karen, my midwife, said, why don't you and Landon get a little bit more sleep? And I'll be back in about 30 minutes and you'll be ready to push. And I said, that sounds great. And then at the exact same time, I heard all these monitors making all these loud noises. So I looked over and I saw that there was the heart rate monitor, and the heart rate of Haven had just plummeted completely. Her heart rate was, I think, 40 or 50 beats per minute. And obviously everyone in the room started becoming concerned. So they were checking me. They were calling all these nurses and doctors to come into the room. There was a bunch of people surrounding me. I was very confused. I kept asking what was happening. Landon was very concerned and confused, trying to figure out what was going on. Then they explained the baby's heart rate had dropped because of the epidural, and you progress so fast, and it's not typical of a first-time mom. Haven dropped very quickly, and her heart rate dropped because your body wasn't ready, etc., etc. So they said, all right, let's try different positions and see if maybe her heart rate will go back up to a normal rate. But I couldn't move because I just got the epidural. And everything below my hips, I was unable to feel. So I tried to move as best as I could on my side. Heart rate was still not coming up. And then I tried to push my legs all the way to the other side. Her heart rate was still not coming up. And then I got on all fours, my hands and my knees, and her heart rate still was not coming back up. And I got to become a nervous wreck at this point, and I was very scared of what was going to happen. So They called the doctors because there was possibly going to need to be an emergency C-section. And the doctors came in and they said, you have to start pushing right now. So they pulled this big light down right in front of my face. I opened my legs as wide as possible. They had Landon hold my left leg. They had a nurse on the other side of me holding my right leg. And none of my family was there. Really, my whole family was supposed to be there. Landon's mom, my mom, everyone was supposed to be there. But, like I said, everyone was asleep and everything happened so fast. So there were all these people in the room and everyone was watching and making sure that I was okay and the baby's heart rate was okay. So I got very paranoid and I was pushing, but I didn't understand how to push because I'd never done this before. So they went and put an oxygen mask on my face to make sure that I was getting enough oxygen. So I was trying to push as hard as I could. And then finally a nurse came over and they gave me a shot in my arm to slow the contractions down because they were happening so fast. And that made my paranoia much worse because I didn't understand what was happening. The nurse was explaining how to push, but the mask I had on was super loud. So I pulled the mask down and she said how to push was essentially like you're taking a bowel movement. So I was pushing so hard and I didn't realize you can only push when you're having a contraction. So as soon as a contraction happens, you have to push as hard as you can. So Karen, my midwife, was sitting right in front of me on the table, checking, making sure everything was good, watching Haven, and then finally I pushed as hard as I could and Karen said, I can see her head. She has so much hair. And I felt like it was a dream. It didn't feel real. So I was pushing as hard as I can. And finally, the doctor and the other nurses left because they realized that I was pushing her out very fast. And at that time, I started pushing. It was about 5:20 in the morning. And I was pushing as hard as I could. And finally, they could see her face. And Landon was looking back from my eyes down and looking at Haven and seeing what was happening. And I was saying, no, keep your eyes on me. So everyone finally calmed down because I realized she was healthy, I was healthy. And then at 5:50, I pushed her all the way out and they put her right on my chest. And it really just felt surreal. It felt like a dream. It was just such a perfect, beautiful moment. And Haven was happy and healthy and beautiful, and looking at her and realizing that she was inside of me for almost 10 months, it just felt like it wasn't real. This is me and Landon's baby, both of us in one little human. It just didn't feel real. So I pushed her out in 20 minutes and it was a lot of work, but Karen, my midwife, she had said, wow, you beat records. Because typically first-time moms, they have a very, very long labor. They take a long time to progress, a long time to push. But about 11:30 p.m. to when my water broke until about 6 a.m. is very, very fast for a first-time mom. So I was with Haven just looking at her, and then Landon wanted skin to skin. So he took off his shirt and they were looking at each other and he was holding her, and then finally my mom got there because Landon had been texting her and saying, hey, Tabitha's about to start pushing. So my mom finally got there and she was extremely confused because she thought she was going to walk into me pushing, but she walked in and I was just holding Haven. My mom was like, I can't believe I missed all that. So I texted all my family, my friends, and said, hey, I had the baby, and everyone responded and they were like, what? That's so fast. How did that even happen? It was overnight and you gave birth. So, and then they moved Haven over and they checked everything on her. She was great, 10 toes, 10 fingers. They did her APGAR test and it was all good. Everything was perfect. And Haven's birthday is 11/11, November 11th, and she was born at 5:50 in the morning. She was very eager to come into the world and meet everyone here. So it was really such a beautiful, beautiful experience. And my midwife, Karen, she was so amazing. And I just feel like I could not have done it without her. And the epidural, I want to say thank you to the epidurals of the world. Thank you. And I was so close to doing it natural, but I'm really happy with my decision to go ahead and get the epidural. And I'm just so happy that Haven is so beautiful and healthy and most importantly, safe. Really, I'm just so happy that she's safe. It was very, very scary process with her heart rate dropping so quickly and going into labor so quickly. I'm just very lucky that she's okay. So that's our birth story. I really hope that you all subscribe if you enjoyed this video. We'll be posting a lot more videos regarding raising Haven, teaching her Montessori, teaching her how to sign, teaching her yoga. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for watching. Love to all. Stay safe. Bye-bye.